Good morning, guys. Ken at Tortoise Capital. This is the hybrid trading workshops Saturday morning question and answer and coffee talk for July 25th, 2020. I think this week's evening strategy podcasts were really well done. I think the one from the 21st, from July 21st, is definitely worth listening to. I went through about a 45-minute strategic assessment of the market, and I think that was one of the highlights of the week. It was this diagram here, and in that I kind of laid out an operational assessment, a strategic assessment, which provides context for the tactical decisions that we're making. And so the point of all that was that it's kind of very easy to get tunnel vision, that if all we're ever looking at is the 10-day look back period, then this just feels like, oh, well, a breakout at 7 going to 8 and 9 and all that jazz, with the possibility of the big red arrow coming back. But there's more to that environment than meets the immediate eye. So we can get very fixated on the lens that we've chosen to look through. So one of the ways to protect ourselves against an overconfidence or an overcommitment to the current point of view is to adopt that multi-time frame, multi-lens analysis. And in that setting, what we do is we can look back, 30 days and see where we're at. So right now, what that feels like is more that blue box feels more like, well, a range-bound trading range, and we just are at the second test of that price level of 325. So if I look at this one, I say, well, I wouldn't be as surprised to see a big red arrow down, because the last time it was here, it had a big red arrow down. So that would not be surprising behavior at all. And that feels differently than if I was just looking at this, in which case this is just an uninterrupted upward movement. And if I look at the last 3 days, oh man, this is really good. This is really just going to go. It's just starting to move. So by adopting a 30-day look back, we get a different sense. I could understand how some people here would be very eager to put stops in place and protect those profits. So at the first sign of weakness, rather than seeing buying interest, I would see selling interest. So adding that lens might give us a more nuanced view of what's going on, or what could go on, because we're trying to detect potential energy. Well, if I go back from 60 days to 90 days, well, then what it looks like is a market that is going up in chunks, that we had a real nice move from here to here, and then a great big sideways move. But ultimately, in 3 times the amount of time, achieving the same level of gain that we achieved over here. So now this feels more like a stepladder approach, and that after having one test and now the second test, we can feel like, yeah, there's some upside potential, but we wouldn't be as surprised, and that this market seems to go through these chunks, and that when it finally breaks through, then it can go. So that 90-day look would give us a different nuanced feel. If I go to 120 days, now suddenly I've had 2 legs up quickly, and then a third leg up took twice as long as both of these first 2 chunks. So this feels more like a market that on longer term is starting to stall. So some retracement like this big red arrow wouldn't be surprising. That would feel like an ordinary pullback, the same way it pulled back here and then recovered. But we would still feel that price around 292 as support. Now, if I go back 150 days, now suddenly this has a completely different feel. This feels like all we've done is recover what was lost. And now that we have averted disaster, now's the time really to be aggressive about preserving the gains from the green box, the yellow box, and the blue box, 4, 5, and 6. And that the upside doesn't feel anything like the relief that we feel from having dug ourselves out of a hole. So which one of those interpretations is correct? All of them. They are correct with respect to the baseline lens and the setting that you chose in order to make sense out of it. So now when we're thinking about making sense of the world, the context that we choose to do that in, whether it's a 3-day, a 10-day, a 30-day, a 60-day, 100-day, 150-day, or whatever those time frames are. Each and every one of those has something to say. No single one of them is objectively the correct way to do that. But what we can say is that there are people who act as if the frame or the lens that they've chosen actually does make sense. I have to take this phone call. Just a moment. Hey, boss, are we starting a board meeting here soon?
We're starting the annual meeting at 10:30, but the Zoom link you sent to Tracy starts at 11.
Okay.
Oh,
all right.
Yeah. Or get a new one real quick.
I'll get it started here. I'm in the middle of a podcast that was going to go till 11. I'm gonna accelerate through this one and then I'll get that going. Hey, give me about 5 minutes.
Okay.
Yep. Bye. I'm going to have to power through this in about 5 minutes. I will record a longer version of this. I've got the Soccer Association's annual board meeting has to go half an hour early because the mayor is coming to listen, and I am in technical support of that. So I just want to say briefly that the lens that you choose really does matter. And you should be mindful that each of these lenses gives us a insight that's not available in any other lens. And then our job is like the 6 blind men and the elephant to kind of sort out which one we want. So listen to the podcast on the 21st of June for that one. I would say then that connected to that is this idea, and that is that that 3-day, 10-day lens now starts feeling like the tactical. So we might think of this as a 3 to 10-day lens. And what we're interested there is rapid framing to quickly make decisions, to execute with energy and efficiency, that we need to have plays that are on board and ready to go, and that our mission in the tactical environment is simply to survive and thrive. If we can, then at the operational level, now we're talking about swing trading, and this is probably more like the 10 to 30 days. Now what we're thinking about is chaining together these little series of tactical events into continuation patterns. And we might have battle drills for how to do that, how to move in and move out of the market, to use core and turbo, and that takes a certain amount of training, just like juggling. And then we want to have a set of patterns that we can match and plays that we can make, so that when we sense what's going on in the market and we match those patterns, and we can respond with the appropriate pattern. And then if we can do enough of those at the strategic level, this is where we might be. Let me go out to like 60 days on this one. And then from here, we might be at like 60 to 150 days looking for those larger trends and strategic issues. And is there a secular change? Have we gone from deep sell-off to recovery to sideways assessment? And is there some kind of broad concept that allows us to link together pieces of chains into a coherent longer-term strategy? And that there is a certain cultural point of view, a collection of behaviors and habits of mind that transcend just simple training, but becomes something like educated, refined judgment, thoughtful, multiple perspectives, where we're trying to assess the broad situation to make sure that we've picked the right pattern or the right chain. And so in a strategic setting, what we're really thinking about there is getting the best trade-off between exploring new territory and exploiting the one that we're in. So we're looking, with the exploration, we're looking for the boundary of the current operational setting. So that's the relationship between strategic and operational. And I feel if you listen to that one on the 21st, you'll get the sense of that decision making. Oops, wrong way. If you listen to the podcast from last night, you would have heard me talk about assessment with some histograms. And assessment is essentially affecting everything that we do. When we do plan, prepare, execute, and assess, we're looking at the results and processes that brought us to the action that we took. When we're using tactical process of detect, decide, deliver, and assess, we're monitoring the ongoing process to determine if there's more there or if we've reached an endpoint. But assessment is crucial in both of those. We think of market assessment, like I just showed you, the self-assessment of the zero state and where we are, and then systems assessment so that we can check the alignment of the system that we've chosen with the market conditions, and then checked it with our ability to operate that thing correctly. So we now have a virtuous circle of self, systems, and market tied together by assessment. Earlier this week, I did the speech on the machine gun and the setting of head, space, and timing. So there's a really good briefing earlier this week where I compare mechanical operations to our trading psychology of system, self, and market. All of these things, whether we're talking in the Army, we talk about force design to design the system that we want. So that's really the substitute is system design, is to get the right blueprint and the working model for what we want. And then in force integration, we start modernizing and maintaining that so that the design is updated. That's the same as system integration, where we're adding new things to it so that it's modernized and well maintained so that we can be ready for whatever is coming on. And that becomes an assessment of how prepared are we. So it turns out that operational readiness is the end result of this design, integration, and assessment process so that we can take action in the world that is correct. And then we know that every system requires service and maintenance. That's what these little weekend Q&A sessions are for, and the use of your job book and the kata is to check how well you are prepared to execute them. And then modernization is simply deciding how and when to add things to those systems to keep them current with what we know. And then finally, this fog of war that we're contending with, we may be detecting observations and facts But remember that some of these things that bubble up out of our unconscious, the paradigm that we're using consciously or unconsciously to make sense of the world, which can be expressed in a set of assumptions we believe to be true. What are those assumptions about the world and the self and systems and how they work? And then those can become stated beliefs that we hold to be true. And then this is the rub right here. The lens that we use to understand the world often shapes the kinds of observations we can even see. If I start thinking about buying a Lexus, then all I can see on the road are Lexi. And so now the facts that we think are out there and are true, that we think come from the world, are really shaped by the kinds of observations we are prepared to make, which come from the beliefs and assumptions that we make. So this whole idea of the elephant and the 6 blind men was a really good briefing for you to listen to this week. So all of these things come together in a formal way when we're satisfied that we understand something about the world, so we can come up with a system, which is a combination of 80% rules, 20% judgment. You get to pick what that mix is as a hybrid trader. But at some point, when we've locked those in through practice, observation, repetition, and coaching, we've locked that in. Now we've got a deck of cards that we're assembling, which is a collection of all these different patterns that we have become proficient at, that we become that we can trust. And now we can be concerned about pattern recognition. So we detect the pattern, we decide which one out of the deck of approved playing cards out of our playbook, decide which one we're going to use, then deliver that thing flawlessly, and then execute, then assess how well we did all 3 of those things. So this notion of assessment is not just looking at the histogram, and it's not just looking at the individual trade, but it's looking at it in terms of this larger set of operations. So I will have some more to say about that. I'll record one tonight where I take a look at the histogram that Stephen gave us, and I will post that as an additional video connected to this. But I got to get this other meeting moving, and that's everything that I want to cover this morning for Coffee Talk. So I appreciate your patience. And I do have an obligation to these folks to get them squared away for the board. Take good care. Yeah, I will get this. I'll get this posted as well, Lisa. I'll do this one, and then I'll post the one that I do later tonight as a pair. Okay. So take good care, guys, and we will see you. So tomorrow night, I will review the trade frames that have been posted in the chat room, if any. Otherwise, I'm going to post my trade frames for swing and tactical trading. So take good care.